Alright, howdy there folks, it is I again, Brandon Wenzel, your guide into all things martial arts cinema related. Why? Because of course, I know Kung Fu. So, starting off this video, again, unfortunately, forced to apologize once again. Again, one day, maybe, I'll be able to do one of these videos without having to apologize for a previous one. But, this one wasn't entirely in my hands, so, you know, I can at least have that. In my last video, of course, I mentioned Super Sequel Sunday, where I was going to do a pair of movies on Sunday. I unfortunately didn't get to that, in part because, for whatever reason, the previous video had a bitch of a time uploading, and I couldn't really, I don't know why, but that took like twice as long as it normally did, and I had to go to work, so sorry about that. Not that any of you really care, but, you know, just because, you know, because I'm a nice guy and I feel semi-responsible, so. But, anyway, let's go ahead and move on. Try to get to this one relatively quickly, alright? Okay. Because I actually do have to go to work in about an hour, so. Okay, so, alright, continuing our Cynthia Rothrock movie marathon, which if you've been following by now, you already know about. And I'm not going to go into, because to hell with all of you. So, Cynthia Rothrock movie marathon, boom, Rage and Honor 2. Again, Super Sequel Sunday, which didn't actually occur. Where I did Rage and Honor 1. If you watch this video, you might want to watch the previous one first, because I am going to be, of course, referencing this one in relation to that one, but, maybe you enjoy spontaneity and having sex with strange people. Yes? No? Okay, fine. So, alright. Rage and Honor 2. Starring, of course, the amazing Cynthia Rothrock, and this time, on the cover, Richard Norton. Yay! And just as in my last one where I mentioned, I will bring up, right as a disclaimer, there is in fact no one raping Cynthia Rothrock in this film, and certainly not Richard Norton. Yay again. Let's keep that going, folks. I don't think we need Richard Norton raping Cynthia Rothrock in these films. It's just a little weird. But I like to start out these things here with my Cynthia Rothrock movie marathon with a Cynthia Rothrock fact. So, what's my Cynthia Rothrock fact for today? Again, I'm kind of running out of the better ones. I've got like one or two kind of saved up for a few films, but so my present one is although she did retire for a period of time, she recently came back into cinema, I believe in 2012, and during that period of time, she did, and I believe still does, she runs a martial arts studio in Studio City, California. Like I said, folks, unfortunately, a lot of the better ones are gone right now, so I'm going to dig deep, though, okay? I'm going to dig deep and try to find you some good shit. There are other websites besides Wikipedia, so so anyway, Rage and Honor 2, starring Cynthia Rothrock and Richard Norton. Let's go into it. Alright, well, the movie comes from 1993. It's directed by a guy named Guy Norris, who is really not terribly significant in the grand scheme of things, but I guess he does get kind of a notable mention in that he was like the second unit director on all of the Lord of the Rings films. So, you know, that's pretty cool. You know, and then, you know, this. Kind of an odd transitional period, but why not? Okay, so what is Rage and Honor 2 about? Alright, well, okay. The film doesn't exactly pick up where the last film left off. In fact, it takes place in Indonesia this time around, where apparently, unlike America, it is not, in fact, legal to be Australian, as Richard Norton has no problem getting around here. Okay, all right. So, some background for the characters. All right. Well, the film starts off in this film. Oddly enough, in the previous film, Richard Norton, of course, was a cop. Well, in this one, apparently Cynthia Rothrock decided to give up the martial arts studio and become a cop herself. In fact, she's kind of an Interpol type agent person thing. I don't know, but that's what she is. Just kind of because, no particular reasons ever given, but you just sort of buy it. Why not? So she gets sent on a mission because, of course, there's a mission that needs doing. That's why you get sent on missions. That's fundamentally the reason for them. So she gets sent on a mission to go to Indonesia to go deal with this dude named Boon Tao, who is like, general bad guy. I don't know. He runs guns and diamonds and, just about everything. Drugs and all kinds of stuff. So just general evil dude. And so she gets sent there to go deal with this whole thing. She has to infiltrate a bank because she's pretty sure that the guy who runs the bank is like the accountant for Boon Tao, which of course he is. So, okay, accountant for Boon Tao. That's what that guy does. And of course, wouldn't you know it, because it's a small world after all, folks. Who the hell should have to be in Indonesia? But Richard Norton, who, if you'll remember from the previous film, after being framed for murdering a cop, had to flee the country. So, I don't know how he got to Indonesia, by the way, but why not? Where, at this point, he basically acts as kind of a co-owner of sort of a local bar. Which would be fine, except for, of course, the fact that, well, you have Boon Tao's guys running around and causing problems and asking for security money and all that stuff and everything, But, of course, that doesn't sit well with Richard Norton, because why the hell would that sit well with Richard Norton? He's Richard Norton. He don't take no guff. So, of course, they show up, they're goons, and, again, I did my whole little bit in American Samurai about goons. And, where they just kind of show up, hi, goons, And Richard Norton proceeds to beat the ever-loving shit out of him. Everybody's happy, and they go about their day. Well, okay, in the meantime, turns out that Boon Tao, it actually turns out that, in fact, the manager of the bank is, in fact, Boon Tao's accountant. He's kind of squeezing Boon Tao for more money, kind of feels like, I'm underappreciated in the workplace, and since, we run an illegal empire and there's no HR to speak of, I'm just going to kind of, hold you hostage with all the information I have on you. Which, of course, doesn't sit well with Boon Tao. Boon Tao's like, dude, why are you doing this to me? You used to be cool, and other guy's like, look, dude, things have changed, man. I've grown up. I don't... different priorities now. It used to be cool just being the accountant for an evil empire, but, I got my own shit going on now. I got a kid. And that takes priority in my life. I need to think about his well-being. Oh, yeah, by the way, he has a kid. Kid's name is Tommy. He's played by Patrick Muldoon. What about Patrick Muldoon? Well... He was in a bunch of soap operas. Probably the most notable thing for him, was that he was in the movie Starship Troopers, the first one, the good one, not all the awful ones. So don't run in terror of the awful fucking Starship Troopers sequels. No, he was in that one. Who did he play? Well, he played... This is really all I have to say. I could describe everything else about him, and it would not be as descriptive as saying this. He's the poor son of a bitch who gets his brain sucked out by a giant fucking bug. That's who he is. So he plays Tommy. And he sees Richard Norton kicking ass and taking names and decides, you know what? I'd like to be able to kick ass and take names too, because I suck. And he does. So he takes up with Richard Norton, albeit somewhat reluctantly on Richard Norton's side of things. But he figures, I'll take the kid under my wing. He's terrible. If I don't, he'll be raped at some point, and possibly by me in another movie. Stop raping people, Richard Norton. It's out of character for you. I like soda. I was actually thinking about it after watching my previous review. I'd always wondered watching stand-up comedy specials why they always drank water. Although occasionally sometimes they would drink alcohol. But that was about it. You never saw that. And I always thought, I like soda. If I were going to do stand-up, I would drink soda. And then I realized that it's carbonated and it makes you belch. So my apologies on that. Why am I still drinking soda? Because I like soda better than water. And if I'm doing my reviews, you're just going to have to live with it. Where was I? Trailing off. Now back on the trail. So yeah, Tommy's kind of awful. He can't, I'm not even going to say he can fight. He can't really fight, and he's just kind of an idiot. But, that's what makes him lovable. So, of course, because of this whole thing and the connection to Tommy, Cynthia Rothrock and Richard Norton end up running into each other once again. It's time for the ass-kicking duo of the 90s to get back in there. So, alright, well, that's what they do. They decide to kind of work together to, figure out this whole Boontown thing. And then on top of that, there's this other guy named Dazzo. Dazzo's this other criminal empire guy who's slowly but surely kind of muscling in on Dazzo's territory. Dazzo doesn't appreciate that because Dazzo don't take no guff. He does. I'm not, that's a lie. Dazzo takes his fair share of guff. But, or not Dazzo, Boontown. Anyway, so okay. The movie proceeds from there, where, Boontown sends his thugs to go find Tommy, because, Tommy's like, a wounded ferret. He's not exactly hard to get a hold of. But unfortunately, this wounded ferret has a bodyguard by the name of Richard Norton, who, of course, proceeds to kick the shit out of people and goons, and, particularly one goon in particular, this sort of big, blonde, muscular dude, who I'm going to bring up, in my interesting goon news segment that I do. So, okay, so, things begin to progress, and, they're trying to kind of figure this whole thing out, and, oh wait, in the meantime, Tommy's dad, the accountant guy, well, he, gets killed. That's pretty bad, right? Bad for Tommy. Tommy's useless, and, without Richard Norton to protect him, and now his dad gone, he'll surely be eaten by wolves. Oh god, if you watch the movie, just imagine the poor bastard being eaten by wolves. It's tremendously, tremendously satisfying. But okay. So, they go over there, they manage to track Boontown to his headquarters. Well, not exactly track, because they're sort of betrayed by this chick, who, by the way, manages to be a chick who's also a gang leader, who doesn't fucking refer to herself in the third goddamn person 900 times in the same fucking movie. Thank you! Thank you so much, Guy Norris, for that one. Apparently, you saw the first one and were like, that bitch needs to go. So, I wish I could say that there's, a lot more to be said about, the intricacy of the plot, but there really isn't as far as that part of the film is concerned. It's a fairly simple plot, up until the end. Where are we at? Well, we're at the end, oddly enough, because it's only 14 minutes in. Might actually get this done in 20 minutes. So it gets to the end of the film, and, they get to Boontown's, and, you killed my father! No, I didn't. Oh, wait, I forgot. I did. Yeah. And first of all, what starts off is what's gotta be just the least resistant gunfight in the history of filmmaking, because, Boontown is a small army of fully armed guys, and they're all just gunned down in all of, 3 seconds. It's rather pathetic. I guess Boontown is just hired, a bunch of, paraplegic, albino, autistic kids to be his guards, because they just get mowed through. That's another visual for you. Just a paraplegic, autistic, albino kids. Just... Oh, yeah. Straight to hell for me. Straight to hell. But who's he gunned down by? Well, he's gunned down by, Dazzo, of course, right? No, wrong. He's in fact gunned down by a dude named Tanaka. Again, I'm good at Japanese names. But he's gunned down by a guy named Tanaka. Well, he's actually, they refer to him as Tanaka at one point. But he's been the guy kind of posing as Dazzo. In fact, turns out there is no Dazzo. Dazzo is in fact Patrick Muldoon, a.k.a. Tommy, a.k.a. the wounded ferret of the film. In an actual honest-to-God twist that you don't really see coming, because up until then, Tommy's relatively incompetent. I mean, I guess there's like a few maybe hints, but I think you could actually pass it off. I mean, I wouldn't say that I was mind-blowingly, my brain fell out my ass surprised, but they're actually not blatantly obvious about it, which was nice. It's a nice change of pace. Again, credit to Guy Norris on that one. Obviously using those skills for his directing features in the Lord of the Rings movies. It's all about Rage and Honor too. That's how he did it. So, again, turns out, okay, Tommy's actually a bit of a shitbag. In fact, he's actually a rather brilliant shitbag. He killed his dad, he manages to get rid of Dazzo, he exploited Cynthia Rothrock and Richard Norton. Actually did a damn fine job of everything, I'm not gonna lie. Probably his only big mistake in the film is doing the classic bad guy thing of throwing the heroes in there, leaving a bomb with them, and then leaving and presuming that somehow they wouldn't get away. But of course they do, because it's Cynthia Rothrock and Richard fucking Norton. You seriously think that they're gonna get blown up by... No, they're just not. Alright, I mean, that's just not gonna happen. They're gonna be fine. And sure enough, they are. They manage to escape, and, eventually you have this big, final throwdown at the end of the film between Tommy and Richard Norton and Tanaka, a.k.a. Pseudo Dazzo, and Cynthia Rothrock. So, alright, so you've got the whole thing, and there was this whole thing about stolen diamonds, but really that doesn't matter. It was relatively unimportant. So it becomes this whole big throwdown thing at the end there, and, general ending stuff, right? Right. So, about the end fight, because really at this point, that's pretty much the main thing to focus on at this point in the film, is in fact the end fight. It is simultaneously rewarding and just also very, very kind of disheartening, I guess, to a certain extent. And the reason being, like I said, Richard Norton squares off against Tommy, who proceeds to continue to prove that, at least as far as a physical fight's concerned, man, he's a rabbit running away from a fucking hawk. Despite having learned everything, you taught me everything that you learned, is, they always proceed to do. That, by the way, signs your death warrant, and sure enough, Richard Norton just beats on this guy. I mean, he just beats the shit out of this kid. I mean, and it's great, but also, it's rewarding because you want to see this guy get the shit kicked out of him because he's such a terrible little asshole, who's just almost evil for the sake of evil and so smug about it that you just want to see him get his fucking face kicked in. But at the same time, I mean, it's almost tantamount to Richard Norton beating up a small child. I mean, you really could have just, you could have interchanged, Gary Coleman in there, and it would have been to a similar effect. I mean, he just wrecks the guy. I mean, you know, even when he tries to be sneaky about it, he just is pathetic. I mean, at one point early in the fight, he literally could have ended the fight, but he's like, nope, I'm gonna continue to beat the hell out of you. You don't get done with this yet. Because I see that mop of red hair, and you're my stepchild, so that's what I'm gonna beat you like. So there's that. And then there's also the fight with Cynthia Rothrock and Tanaka. Tanaka proves to be, you know, apparently the muscle of Tommy's empire, as it were, because he actually gives Cynthia Rothrock a fair amount of problems. The messed up thing about the end fight, though, is that because you have these two fights going on the one hand you have Richard Norton really just abusing Patrick Muldoon on the one end, and then on the other end, you have this fight between Cynthia Rothrock and this dude Tanaka. That's actually, you know, I don't want to say it's a particularly good fight, but it's okay. But it's certainly a much more back and forth fight. So it creates kind of a weird contrast because on the one hand, you're more emotionally invested in seeing Richard Norton beat the hell out of Patrick. But on the other end, you're more invested as far as, you know, actually there being a somewhat interesting fight in Cynthia Rothrock's. But of course, you know, this dude Tanaka just sort of shows up near the end of the movie. There's no context for him in which you're supposed to really feel, you know, any particular interest in the fight other than, well, you know, it's a decent fight. So it's like a separation of style and substance. It's almost impressive, honestly. I don't think I've ever seen something done quite to that extent. But of course, they win because they have to, because they're the heroes. And they win, and Tommy gets sent to jail, where I'm sure he spent the rest of his days being pretty much anybody who could afford him, you know, their lily white bitch in Indonesian prison. How many packs of cigarettes is he worth? Well, he's pretty. You might have to get a carton. He can take some pride in that, the little prick. Oh, man. Anyway. So, okay, so that's the film, right? Alright, so, moving on to my little after segment thing that I do here. Interesting Goon news, right? I was going to bring that up. I said I was going to, and I didn't lie this time. So, first interesting Goon news, alright? You might have mentioned, or you might have overheard me when I was talking about, not overheard, but heard me say, you know, that Richard Norton has this thing with this guy who's one of Dazzo's goons, who's just referred to in the movie as Thor, who's this big blonde buff guy. Well, who plays said big blonde buff guy? Well, it's our old pal Ron Vreeken. If you watched my film for American Samurai, you might remember him. And so, yeah, he's in this movie, and he actually squared off against Richard Norton at least a couple times. I want to say possibly more than that. So, you know, my guess is maybe he knew the guy or something like that. Or, you know, maybe he just met him on one of the sets and was like, I enjoy kicking the shit out of you, sir. And I enjoy being kicked the shit out of by you. So, let us go. I don't know why you'd have... Richard Norton's Australian. I think Ron Vreeken's from Amsterdam. And I went with British. Oh, man. At the very least, I didn't do, like, you know, buck-teeth Chinese, man, you know. That would have been terribly inappropriate. Anyway, so that's Ron Vreeken. And then I also wanted to bring up Tanaka real quick, who, as far as I can tell, is simply called Tanaka. He doesn't seem to have any other credits that I could find, other than just Tanaka. The only reason why I wanted to bring him up was because, I figured he deserved a little nod, particularly since, you know, he has this fight with Cynthia Rothrock, and yeah, it's decent. But I particularly want to bring it up because after looking at the guy's credits, he actually did a number of films with Cynthia Rothrock. Probably not in terribly important roles since he's just Tanaka. But, I suppose that's worth mentioning, and, again, she's probably friends with him, or, I'm not going to do another accent, but again, I enjoy, that was kind of an accent, whatever, the whole thing that I just did with Richard Norton and Ron Freakin', I don't know, I just figured that was worth mentioning, because he was in Lady Dragon, and the sequel that I cannot get a hold of on anything other than VHS Lady Dragon 2. By the way, if anybody knows somebody who can get that shit made, help me the fuck out, man. I'd love a DVD copy of that. But anyway, so yeah, that's Rage and Honor 2. Where does it stand in relation to Rage and Honor 1? Let's do a good and bad, but let's do also a little bit of a comparison thing, right? Okay. If you noticed, in this one, I didn't bring up space goblins. Yeah, that's definitely a good thing about this one in relation to this one. Sure, there are a few moments that kind of feel a little bit forced, like, just the fact they just so happen to run into each other in fucking Indonesia, of all places. The film holds to a simple premise and stays true to it. It doesn't go out of its way to try to, be clever or anything like that. And when it is clever at times, like with, Patrick Muldoon's character eventually being the villain, it does so in a pretty succinct way. It's not trying, and in the case of Rage and Honor 1, often failing, to be smarter than it is. And so it certainly point in that regard goes to Rage and Honor 2. Maybe not lack thereof of space goblins, but certainly minimal amount of space goblins. Maybe even lack thereof. So it's got that going for it. All right, the action. Well, where do they stand? All right, who wins, who loses? That's a tough one. I would say on an overall scale, probably Rage and Honor 1, because particularly one of the things that I guess I'm not going to do a point thing anymore. One of the kind of compare and contrast things, one of the compare and contrast things that definitely wins for Rage and Honor number 1 is Cynthia Rothrock's role in the film. In Rage and Honor 1, one of the few things that it actually did pretty well, that I had really no complaints about, was that even if it was a bit thinly veiled, both of the characters actually had good reasons to be in the film together. Both of them kind of got their end of the story, and I can't even say that it actually ended in a similar conclusion for the two of them. They both had their own agendas, and it was really only because Richard Norton isn't a bastard of epic proportions that they do eventually recombine at the end of the film. Rage and Honor 2, that's not really the case. They try to do that, but it definitely becomes much more Richard Norton's film. And that's particularly disappointing because the two of them work so well together, that seeing one of them in kind of a I don't want to say subservient, but, it's a secondary role to the other, particularly, with Richard Norton kind of leading the way. Nothing against Richard Norton, but, it just becomes kind of, like I said, it's very disappointing. And I mean, Cynthia Rothrock definitely ends up really kind of feeling more like, just the distraught heroine of the film at times. Even having to request help in her fight with Tanaka from Richard Norton, and there's a scene where the bomb's about to go off, and they have to kick down this like metal grate to get out of the building, and she leaves that firmly to him. Whereas in the first film, the two of them were really equals. Cynthia Rothrock brings up several times in the film that she probably could have kicked the shit out of Richard Norton. Whether it was true or not, she at least had the intention of saying it, and in doing it in the film. And in this, that's not the case. Richard Norton is firmly the strong man of the film. He gets to fight Ron Vreeken, and then gets to beat the ever-loving shit out of the redheaded stepchild that is Patrick Muldoon. And she just kind of gets a fight with Tanaka, And so that's definitely a huge, huge point in favor of Rage and Honor 1, is just that it actually managed to do a good job of kind of, doling out credit where credit was due. Whereas Rage and Honor 2 really is more of a Richard Norton film, I think, in the grand scheme of things. I think it tried, but it failed in that regard. So, another thing I have to give points to Rage and Honor 1 for was that Rage and Honor 1 had a better sense of humor about itself. There's a constant joke in the film with Richard Norton's character where people will, upon realizing, hey, you're not from around here, they'll ask him the question, so how are you enjoying your stay in the States? Or, something along those lines. And it's just a fun little thing, and the movie even kind of ends on it, which I enjoyed in that film. I didn't bring it up in my review, unfortunately, because I forgot about it. And there's really none of that here. Not to say that the movie doesn't have a sense of humor about itself, but that would have been a great, that would have been a great little carryover joke. You also never get to see Richard Norton do his signature line, where he kicks the shit out of somebody, painful, kind of asks quizzically, which came up in one of his films, and he kind of just did in a lot of them. Even did in Rage and Honor 1, and doesn't do it in Rage and Honor 2, so it kind of, that seems like such a minor thing, but it takes away from the continuity of the character from one film to the next. Is that pretty much it? I think that's pretty much it. I don't know that there's a lot else, to be said in relation to the two films. What is the legacy of Rage and Honor and Rage and Honor 2? They're both solid, early 90s martial arts films. Both of them give you a great helping of Cynthia Rothrock and Richard Norton action. And all things concerned, they're a fun little, not series, but, fun little two movies to enjoy if you happen to be a fan of, kind of B-movie martial arts. They could have been better. They could have been a lot worse, though. I think that's one of the major things to take away from it. Ultimately, they're both fun, and, you should enjoy them and take away from them if you can. And if you can't, well, go fuck yourself, because no one cares about you or your opinion. Because no one cares about me or my opinion, except for my 3 subscribers. Hi, 3 subscribers! I love you. But yeah, that's pretty much what I think you can take away from the films. Is they're just fun. They're fun, and they give you Cynthia Rothrock and Richard Norton in a non-rape scenario. And that might be the greatest present for all of us. So, on a scale where the highest of highs and the lowest of lows come to be judged by me, Brandon Wenzel, with the lowest of lows being Beelzebub's anus, that is Ninja Revenge, and the highest of highs being, I don't know. The highest of highs being the upcoming martial arts spectacular amazing movie Skin Trade, which I'm waiting very, very eagerly for. Not the best analogy, but kiss my ass. All things concerned, this has gone pretty well for me, I think. Where does this film fall? Well, the previous film I think I gave like a 5, or, maybe it deserved like a 5.5, or maybe even a 6, but again, they're all arbitrary numbers. I could call it a 24 and it wouldn't fucking matter. Where does it end up? It's probably a 6. I'd say it's a 6. It's probably a little bit better on the overall if you take it simply as a movie than the first Rage and Honor film, despite its faults. What does a 6 amount to? 6 amounts to getting kicked in the head by Kung Lee. It's kind of cool and a little bit of a badge of honor, but, you're probably going to be retarded after it. This guy went over there and broke a guy's arm with his leg. So, I don't think it would go well for your head if you just got solidly clocked by him. But if there is some little part of you going around in that brain of yours, you're going to be thinking, how cool was that shit? Bananas! That's terrible. I feel bad about that. I don't feel bad about that. Who the fuck am I kidding? Anyway, so, because I sent the locator to find the 13 assassins in the City of Fear that taught us all to live by the fist. I am Brandon Wenzel, and I review martial arts films. Why? Because I know Kung Fu. Have a good one, folks. Good night.